Hello, welcome to our next session, Active Learning and Key to Having Fun. So learning for young children has to be engaging and something where they are engaged, they're having fun, and they take interest in doing what they're doing. So let us talk a little bit about what is active learning. Understanding the concept of active learning. So active learning is generally defined as any instructional method. Instructional method can be of a wide variety. It can be engaging, it can be included where children are engaged in it together with the teacher, or it could be just kind of lecture kind, and teacher is the one who takes the most initiative. But in our young children's classroom, the method of learning should be active learning. So it is a form of instructional method that engages students in the learning process. So children take a lead role in an active learning setup or active learning classroom. In short, active learning requires students to do meaningful learning activities and think about what they're doing. So it is not just rotation, or it is not just following the lead or following the instruction. It is somewhere where children are able to think, they're able to experiment and touch, feel, use their sensory learning skills to internalize knowledge. What is active learning? So active learning is where children are discovering, they're processing that knowledge, and then applying that gained knowledge wherever necessary. So that means they have to have a form of learning where they're engaged, where they're taking interest, where they are actively engaged. And then whatever they are discovering while they're doing an activity, they're processing and making a progress in using their thinking to later on, retaining that knowledge and then applying that knowledge successfully in another setup. So active learning, what are some of the most primary things that are necessary for an active learning to happen successfully? It is engagement, experiment, discussion, problem solving, brainstorming, and continual meaningful interaction. Because in a classroom setting where active learning is promoted, children are not sitting there acting as zombies. They are the leaders. They are the active participants in their classroom. So you have to keep in mind when you plan or organize a setup for active learning that children will be engaged actively. They would be taking part in activities. They will be experimenting. They will be use all their senses to find something. They would discuss and have constant back and forth conversation as well, because conversation has to happen very actively as well. And what happens, what comes out, or the outcome of these discussions or conversations, is actually problem solving. They solve problems and they come up with different kinds of solutions to a problem. And they brainstorm while they are finding that solution. They work together and they use their brain and come up with different ideas. So all these things are simultaneously happening or happening at the same time in a classroom where an active learning setup is encouraged and promoted. Why do teachers use active learning strategies? Let's talk briefly about why do we as teachers of young children should or would use active learning strategies in our classroom. So active learning automatically engages the students and increases more involvement of students in the classroom, which is what our goal should be. Our goal as teachers of young students should be to have active student engagement and involvement. It also helps to increase motivation in children, because a lot of times children are not interested anymore, or children don't take part or participate in activities in the classroom. So active learning helps the children to stay motivated and be actively participating. It is a unique opportunity for self-expression. Children feel free, children feel comfortable, children are not afraid of expressing themselves and voicing their opinion and their ways of thought process. And it also provides the children opportunities to practice, because this active learning process includes the children's active participation. So it provides them with opportunities to practice the skills. And as we all know, practice makes it perfect. And practice helps them to internalize, master that knowledge, retain that knowledge, and apply it successfully. It also encourages teamwork, sharing. Children are participating together, and it promotes teamwork in them. It meets the different learning styles of children. Like children, we adults also know that there are different learning styles that each one has. So some are visual learners. They see things and they learn better. Some are auditory learners, which means they hear it. Some are kinesthetic learners, which means they have to do something with their own hands and they need to learn. And also there are people who are combination of some of these skills together. They have to see it, they have to hear it, they have to do it. So these are the different learning styles that children come with. And an active learning classroom or an inquiry-based classroom where children are inquiring, children are thinking. The classroom is set up in a way where children can actively do hands-on activities to be able to express themselves, meets the different learning styles of the students very successfully. And it also gives a sense of ownership to the children. If we give responsibility to someone, that individual takes more interest because he or she takes an ownership of it. So in this case, also the students take an ownership. They feel important, they feel valued, and they know that their opinion is taken and they are a valuable part of the team. And that is what active learning strategy, or some of the active learning strategy that teachers should be using all the times, keeping in mind the different interests of the children, the different learning styles, the different kind of knowledge that the student possesses. But at the same token, the ultimate goal should be to meet the individual needs of the children. So what are some of the different important key aspects of active learning? It's engagement in hands-on learning. They should be able to feel, touch, use their senses to be able to have or gain that knowledge. Develop problem-solving skills. While children are working on these, there is not one way to come to the successful outcome. And sometimes the outcome may not be successful. So we have to always keep in mind that it is the process. which is more important than the outcome or the product. So it develops the problem-solving skills for the children to understand and try different ways to come to the conclusion. It creates independent learners. These learners learn how to participate in the process, come up with different solutions, brainstorm, and problem solve, and gain confidence in self-expression. So what it does, eventually, it builds the foundation for independent learners and problem solvers that is being so necessary. These qualities are so necessary in the later part of life. So as we say, that active learning creates lifelong learners. They have the urge or the interest to keep on learning. No one else has to provide anything, forcefully or pushing them to participate. It is their own sweet, their own liking and their own interest that prompts them to be participants. They learn how to cooperate and collaborate, which means listening, to be a good listener, to be able to take into consideration other people's opinions. And this is a great aspect of social emotional skill development, because as human beings, we need to understand and admit the other people's interests and opinions as well. We as social animals cannot say or cannot do anything that we wish to. So that is one skill we need to teach our young children at the same time. So benefits of active learning. What are some of the benefits of active learning? It encourages the children or challenges the children to take risk, which means what? Taking risk in this case is for children, even if they do not know or understand, they have the intrinsic urge coming from inside their mind to try out and take a risk to know something or do something. It increases engagement, absolutely. It creates a form of learning where children are engaged. They are actively participating. It improves critical thinking skill. Yes, absolutely true, because it provides the children to develop their thinking and multiple ways of solving a problem. It sparkles creative thinking. Along with critical thinking skills, children are also developing creative thinking skills. They are finding different ways to come to a conclusion. There is not one way to reach the end of the path, and fosters real problem solving skills. So it is also an opportunity for children to see the connection between their experience and the world or the environment they are in. So real life connection is also a very important part of their learning process. And it improves score and student performance. It helps in the academic field as well, where research has proven that this kind of inquiry-based active learning helps the children eventually to improve their score or their academic knowledge, and their, they show better scores or better academic performance later in their life. It develops collaborative skills, which we already talked about, working together to be a good listener, taking into consideration other people's opinions, valuing and respecting others are also some of the skill developments that are happening while the children are engaged in active learning. Active learning should meet the or how do you design a classroom where you intend that the children should be engaged in active learning? Keeping in mind all the times that what are your learning objectives, which means what are the things that you want the children to learn from this particular experience or experiment or active engagement that they're going to be doing for any given activity. So the learning objectives have to be very clearly defined before you plan an activity. Active learning should meet the individual need of each child. Absolutely. You should design it in a way that it meets the individual needs of each child. Active learning should emphasize on the process. We always say that the process is more important than the product. So active learning should always keep in mind as teacher that it should be the process which should be encouraged and acknowledged, and specifically offering feedbacks for the children is very important. Teachers should provide timely, specific feedbacks and tell the kids how they're doing, because it motivates them to do or engage themselves further. And intrinsic or inside motivation, the urge to work more or apply oneself more, which applies to the students as well, is very important. And that is why telling them some specific feedbacks, whether it is constructive, something that they need improvement in some areas, or it is something that they have done a remarkable job, is very, very important for the children. Provide children opportunities for reflection. And when you offer that specific feedback, it also gives opportunity for the children to think, what did we do right? What is something that we need to work more on? So the self-reflection skill is very much necessary to be developed in children from an early age. Otherwise, children get frustrated very quickly and they tend to give up. So we cannot have that kind of a temperament or attitude being promoted in children at any time, because these are some of the things that create stress. And as you all know, that children do suffer from stress. They have different ways of expressing it, but they do have their frustration, their stress level, and they do have issues which sometimes comes out in the form of challenging behavior. So it is very important for you as a teacher to know your individual students well, know their interests, know their likes and their dislikes, their limitations, what does prompt them to behave in certain ways. So these are always important tools or important aspects that you should understand and learn in your classroom at all times. And always remember some of the following facts that I'm going to discuss. So learning should be always meaningful and relevant, meaning the children, whatever they're learning, should be appropriate, developmentally appropriate, and it should have some meaning to them or relevancy to them. There should be clear goals and objectives for what the children should be learning. What are the learning outcomes? Because learning outcomes, as I would always recommend you to do, should be measured. So if you have forms of taking tests, some sort of formal test taking or informal way of using some forms that you create yourself or you can download digitally, you should have some form of assessment, because that also proves the relevancy of the effectiveness of the participation that children are engaged in. And you have to use some form to measure their development and progress. So it is very important that you always remember that their learning should be active, meaningful to them, relevant to them, and they should be developmentally appropriate. Learning activities should be of interest, something that children actively and willingly, voluntarily participate in. And if you feel sometimes that children are not participating or they are bored and they are staying away from it or taking up something else to do, don't feel anything negative about the whole aspect. There are different variables or different reasons why that could happen on a particular given day, but always try to assess the situation and see if there is something that you can do to change or add or take off for the children to be re-engaged again. Always involve the children in asking open-ended questions. This is also a very, very important part of early childhood learning and development. So the children should be asked a variety of questions, and open-ended question meaning that it does not have just one answer. So be open, be flexible, be engaging, and motivate the students to come up and share their different kinds of ideas, because when they do that, that is where a lot of thinking is happening, a lot of reflection is happening, and the children are able to think, as we say, out of the box, not the traditional kind of thinking. They come up with some unique, brilliant ideas that you will be amazed, and you will be thinking that how could they even think a little 4-year-old or a 5-year-old is thinking at that level, but it does happen in your classroom. And I'm sure you see it every day in your classroom. So let's talk a little bit about active learning versus passive learning. So what does happen in passive learning? Children are used more to the teacher-directed instructions. Children have to memorize. Children have to learn through rote learning. They do not have much opportunity to express themselves. So it is a classroom that is basically adult-directed. Directives are given, specific directives are given to the children, and children follow certain way of learning. There is not much room or provision for children's input in that classroom. Whereas what does happen in active learning, as we see in this picture, that these are little older children sitting down with the teacher, and the children are not in a restrictive manner, like they have to be sitting down at their desk or table, but they are around the teacher, they are talking, they're discussing, and they are able to, and if we see in this little picture, it shows like a landscape setup, and there are wind turbines, which means they may be talking about energy or alternate energy, how is electricity being generated. And this is something you can even do at your 4- and 5-year-old classroom. You can discuss things at the children's level, make it in a way where children understand at their level, and they can be definitely introduced to ideas or concepts like this as well. So in an active classroom, children are the centers. They are the middle of everything, and they participate, and they talk, they express themselves. And that is what is the significant or the main difference between an active learning and a passive learning environment. And your goal as an early childhood teacher should be always to create an active learning. But at the same time, I would also recommend that active learning does not necessarily mean chaos in the classroom. There is structure, there's routine, there's schedule in the classroom. You are the one who's driving, you are the one who's the leader, and you are guiding and supporting and leading these students towards that learning outcome. So you should clearly tell your expectations. You should have the set of rules that are consistently being applied, and also in an active classroom setting, consistency in this is the key to learning, because please don't do things at random. It requires a lot of your planning and organization to be able to present something. So doing something at random is not going to give you the outcome that you are looking for, and children will be engaged for a while, but then over the period you see that they're losing their interest, and they will pick up some activities that may not be some positive choices. promoting active learning. If you look at these pictures, it could be as simple as children sitting down, learning about the world, the globe, about different countries. It could be something where it's a block table. Children are building something and they're discussing something enthusiastically. And also it could be something as simple as planting a small plant. So active learning is not only restricted to a certain area or a certain center. Active learning can be applied at all areas, and active learning can happen at all times in your classroom. So always remember that the process is more important than the product. So please ensure that children are engaged. You plan activities that are teacher directed, but also child initiated. Children take a lead role in actively participating in the classrooms, and they take interest in doing what they're doing, and there is spontaneous learning that is happening in the classroom. So think about some out of the box thought process for yourself also, that out of the traditional classroom, you can come up with some unique little plans where you can engage the children, like taking the children out for a little nature walk. If you have a little park in the neighborhood, or if you take them to a particular, maybe like a grocery store in your neighborhood, talk to them and let the children see that where does the food come from? Where do they store the food? How does the food get stored up on the shelves? And how do we go in and make our choices to purchase something? And how does the process go? So they have to also learn. This could be a great example for children when you could have a little vegetable patch, create a little vegetable patch, or create a few pots where the children can plant some seeds, vegetable seeds, and they can take care of their garden, and they can see how food is grown and how do we get it and what does happen as an extension or expansion of this knowledge. You can take them to a trip to the supermarket, and they will understand that how you talk about who grows our food. The farmers grow the food. What happens to them when the food is ripe to be, like, say, for rice or a wheat? What happens to them? And you can use storybooks, you can share some video clips, you can share some pictures for the children to learn, and then expanding or scaffolding on that knowledge could be a trip to the grocery store or a trip to the common bazaar. Take them to the bazaar one day, or tell them to, when they make a trip to the shopping vegetables and fruits and fish and or anything, whatever they need, they use or eat with, or go there with their parents or their grandparents, and for them to come back and provide them an opportunity to share that experience with each other, because that is also learning, and that is active learning, and that learning has a direct connection with the outside real world. So this is how learning can happen out of the box, where you can make every opportunity a teachable moment, which is a very important aspect of our early childhood classroom. Listening centers for active experience. So when you set up your classrooms, I hope that you consider about center-based learning, where children have opportunities to move, or I don't know if you have a traditional classroom, but you can set up little areas for children's interests. And these are some of the ways where, or some of the centers where active learning can happen on a regular daily basis. A science center, if you have some science experiments, even if you do not have a center, but you provide opportunities to the children to participate in some science activities, that is active learning. The block area, that block is an area where it is an unlimited area where children can practice and be participating in active learning. Reading corner, Reading is a unique thing that should be used in your classroom. If definitely wants a group reading or children provided opportunities to pick up books individually and read, having to share with each other, retell stories, use puppets to act out the characters, come up with asking them questions about the characters, about the plot, discussing about the different aspects of books that um, the title of the book, or who's the author, who's the illustrator, and explaining all these to the children. Help the children. You take a piece of paper, fold it in fours, and staple it, and have the children make their own book. That particular day, they will be the author, they will be the illustrator of that book, and you can have active learning happening in your classroom. If you have an area in your classroom, what we call is home living, like they pretend to be adults, they pretend to be a mom or dad, a grandparent, or they pick up any other role that they see around them, being a policeman, being a teacher, being a firefighter, being anything, being an auto driver, being a pilot, anything, whatever their imagination, their creativity prompts them to participate in. Outdoor and indoor play are unlimited, or activities that happen in the classroom, that there is so much of active learning happening. And this could be the development and growth in physical development, social emotional skill development, cognitive skill development, physical skill development, creative skill development. So all kinds of happenings can happen while the children are actively engaged in outdoor play and also indoor play. Mathematics, any kind of mathematical activity, be it concrete or abstract mathematics, meaning concrete is they initially, when they're learning mathematical skill or concept, they use objects to learn that skill. So you can design a lesson about counting and have the children to use a dice from the Ludo, or you can have bigger dices as well because they are safer, and have them to count the objects, to touch them, feel them, and concretely see how they can learn about mathematical concepts. Or mathematics can be taught in abstract ways where the number represents a quantity. So depending on the age level and the developmental level of your children, you introduce different kinds of active learning opportunities in the classroom. But these are some of the suggested ways. But as I would always tell you, every moment can be a teachable moment. So grab that opportunity in every aspect in your classroom to engage the children, have them take interest, they get self-motivated, and they are there is active learning. What is happening is laying the foundation for their future growth and development. And the knowledge gained during this process is a lifelong knowledge that's going to help them to grow and develop and become successful later on in their lives. To conclude the training, let us talk a little bit about, to wrap up, what is active learning and how does it affect. So active learning helps the children to become lifelong learners, because the habit, the process that happens in that early tender age lasts a lifetime, and they successfully learn how to apply this knowledge and use it successfully to become productive citizens later in their lives. So what happens when there is a consistent process or availability of active learning, inquiry-based opportunities in a classroom? The children stay more focused. The children, as they are engaged, they take more interest. They are not distracted easily. They stay focused. So they stay on, when they stay focused, they stay on the task, and it improves their attention skill as well. because as we all know, at this tender age, keeping children engaged and holding their attention and interest is a tremendous job for the teachers. So activities or active learning and inquiry-based learning helps the children to stay engaged, improves their attention span, and they don't give up easily. They keep on trying and using different approaches, or as we say, thinking it's out of the box, because there is not one way to come or reach an outcome. There are so many ways, and they feel challenged and self-motivated to try those different ways. And even if they face a failure, they immediately bounce back. Their children are very resilient, meaning children kind of are like they go through an experience which may not be very positive, but they come back and bounce back very easily as well. So it is also our responsibility as teachers and caregivers to provide those opportunities. So even if children feel little stressed and depressed and may not be successful in certain ways, they have opportunities to bounce back and try out and feel that intrinsic motivation to face the challenge again themselves. It is a self-achievement, absolutely. This is something active learning helps the children to see their progress themselves, and they take pride and joy in these achievements. And what it does also, it develops and grows the whole child, because it is very, very important for us to develop the children and help them grow and develop and flourish as a whole child. And overall development should take place. And they enjoy their achievement and they take pride in their work. When someone feels proud about their job and their achievement, what it does so many things together. It provides intrinsic motivation. It provides the children interest to stay on a task. It improves their attention skill, and it provides them opportunities to gain more knowledge. They will venture to participate in challenges, and they will also venture out to know something which they don't know. So all these aspects are simultaneously growing and developing, and habits that are formed at that tender early age is going to stay or remain their entire lifetime and help them to be productive and successful citizens. So you as a teacher play a very fundamental role in providing opportunities for the children to practice and be engaged in active learning and create a classroom environment where there's a lot of, teacher-directed and child-centered learning. So children's interests are your top priority. Their developmentally appropriate introduction of developmentally appropriate materials and projects are also an important part of the learning in your classroom every single day. So I hope that you have been able to collect some information from this training session that you will be able to apply in your classroom setting and help these children glow and flourish and blossom and develop. And thank you.